Hi, and welcome to week 9 of The Grid. I'm Mike Forman, joined as always by Ray Castillo. And boy, we're getting late in the season, Ray. Almost time for the playoffs to kind of start. Teams will be starting to clinch playoff berths. These games become very, very important. And as we speak of that, of course, you see that we're here on a Wednesday instead of a Thursday. The reason is we have two games on Thursday. Starting with one, Victoria East, which Ray you'll be covering against Corpus Christi Ray. Very important game for the Titans.
Yeah, for sure, and especially coming off a tough loss last week. Titans currently on a 2-game losing streak. They're hoping to end that against Ray tomorrow, and it'll be a big test for the Titans. A lot on the line there with 2 games left for them, with their bye week being the final week of the season. Injuries have really taken a toll on East, and they felt it the last 2 weeks, and hopefully they can, respond against Ray. They'll have their quarterback Caleb Longoria back, who missed last week against Veterans Memorial due to a shoulder injury, but he's said he's good to go tomorrow against Ray. So East will really rely on him. Still without Brandon Tumlinson, and no word on his return yet, so they'll have to get it done without him. And they got a glimpse last week of some players who stepped up. Alan Jimenez, the sophomore running back, came in and ran for over 100 yards and scored a touchdown. And, it was a big loss, but, that's positive when you see guys doing that. So East will really be looking to, repeat that and more against Ray, who is coming off a loss of their own against Moody. Yeah. And that really hurt them when you look at the playoff picture. Won't get it in too much, but a lot on the line for East here.
Right. Now, the way we kind of talked about that and the way we figure it, if East wins and Flower Bluff beats West, East is in.
Right.
So, of course, you get in those situations all the time where you look at tiebreakers and things like that. But needless to say, a win would go a long way towards really securing a playoff spot for East.
Oh, absolutely. And be the first, after missing last year, it'd be huge for them, to get back.
Yeah, and we have another game on tomorrow night, which Cuero's going up to Austin to Nelson Field to play Eastside Memorial. And all indications are that this is not going to be much of a contest. Cuero last week against Llano looked as the best I've seen him this season. They're starting to get healthy. They're really figuring out what they can do well, and they did pretty much everything well, both offensively and defensively last week. Eastside Memorial is winless, hasn't scored a point this season, so I think, of course you don't overlook anyone, but I think Coach Reeve is prepared. I think what you might see is a lot of substitutions and even possibly some JV players in the second half because, there's no JV game this week, and that'll give them a chance to get a little action this week. So, and Cuero pretty much would clinch a playoff berth if it wins, but they've got much bigger goals than just getting in the playoffs, obviously. So let's move on. We've got some games Friday, of course. As we spoke about Victoria West and talked about a huge game against Flower Bluff.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, that goes a long way for West as well. They really need that win. You hate to say must win, but with 3 weeks left of the season, I'd say it's a must win for the Warriors. And they can hopefully they can carry that momentum over. They're on a little winning streak of their own, and Flower Bluff will be a big challenge for them. They saw what they did against East, and they got a really good quarterback, and they got a really good passing game. And West will have to stop that.
Yeah, well, Flower Bluff kind of stumbled against Miller last week, which I think says two things. One is Miller is better than a lot of people really thought. And two is this district, pretty much anything can happen, as we saw with Moody beating Ray last week. So nothing's for sure, but the good thing for West is they are at Memorial Stadium, so they do get to play Flower Bluff at home. And like you said, at this point, I don't like to say must win, but it really almost is for West if it wants to make the playoffs. And speaking of playoffs, the Calhoun Sand Crabs need a win Friday over Somerset. That's a nice bus ride they have to Somerset. But the Sand Crabs have been rolling as of late. You saw them last week. Very impressive victory over Floresville.
Yeah, it was a big win to say the least. 78 points. Anytime you can put up, 77 points, that's always a good thing for the players and the coaching staff. And Calhoun finds himself one win away from clinching a playoff berth, and it'll be the first time since 2015. So, it's good to see the Sand Crabs come out and play like that. They had a lot of production from, their quarterback, Connor Kessler, once again, and Steve Johnson did his thing on the ground, and it was just a big win for Calhoun.
Right, and as you know, Ray, every Tuesday in our paper you can see the state high school poll, and online on advosports.com, and that generated a little bit of discussion this week when the 3A poll came out. Goliad moved up to number 2, but and Yoakum got a vote, but the people who weren't happy were the Edna Cowboy fans. They feel like they've been overlooked, and I understand it. They're undefeated. Edna has had a great year so far, played tremendous defense.
Yes.
Has got that slot T going. Kenny Haynes over 1,000 yards. Well, this week is a huge game. Edna goes to Yoakum. Really big game in that district. It won't determine probably the championship because, Goliad's still undefeated. So we still have some more to settle. But that's going to be a huge game with Edna and Yoakum. Yoakum's the team that, I think people around here, maybe the new Yoakum, aren't surprised by its success. But I think some people that really didn't pay close attention are, because when you lose 4 guys that are playing Division I football, usually your team takes a hit. And, obviously you might say Yoakum isn't as naturally talented, but they have talent and they're playing very well. And of course, Coach Bo Robinson does a great job up there with those kids. So this is going to be a great big game at Bulldog Stadium on Friday night. And then also at Tiger Stadium, Goliad will play Hallettsville. That's another big game in that district. Hallettsville struggled. I mean, the problem I think with Hallettsville, they just don't have the numbers. And it's really tough in that district when you don't have a lot of people, because teams are going to wear you down. And if you've looked at most of Hallettsville's losses, a lot of the opponent's points have come late in the second half. And that's, I think, what's happened to Hallettsville. But, as anyone knows that's played Hallettsville, and Coach Tommy Pensick, that you don't ever count Hallettsville out. So, yeah, we can look forward to that. That should be a big game. There's some other games around the area, too, that we'll be looking at, of course. Shiner's going to Kennedy. But another big game in that district is Brazos at Weimar, because Brazos coming off that win over Yorktown. The deal in that district is you really don't want to finish 4th, because if you finish 4th, you're going to get Refugio in the first round. And Refugio seems to be back to its normal pace. And so a lot on the line with that game. If Brazos beats Weimar, then basically what it comes down to is Weimar and Yorktown playing for 4th place. If Weimar wins, then we still have some ways to go and some issues to decide. And Beeville, I wanted to mention in unfortunate news, their great quarterback, Seth Gomez, fractured his fibula last week in the Trojans' loss to Gonzales. He, of course, was leading the area in passing. He was also among the rushing leaders, so that was a tremendous blow for Beeville. And of course, we also need to mention St. Joseph. Right. Another tough loss last week for the Flyers, and they go up to Sugar Land this week to play Fort Bend Christian, who's also 0-2 in district. So, like we said, we don't want to say must wins, but this is a very important game for the Flyers, right?
Right, especially after they came out against Lutheran South, just blank. They just couldn't get going offensively, and Lutheran South took full advantage, and Coach Brian Jones just, wants the Flyers to, put that game in the past and focus on this next one. It'll be a big road test for them, and hopefully, they can come out with a victory, because they do have that last game of the season at home. And as for St. Joseph right now, like you said, I hate to say must win, but it's a big game for the Flyers.
Yeah, because I believe they definitely, feel like this is a team that they can beat and that they need to beat to get in the mix of that playoff situation. So a couple of other games that we should mention. There's a battle of unbeatens in Class 2A Division II. the Fall City Beavers, who have just been steamrolling people, undefeated. They play Charlotte. Charlotte's undefeated. I don't know if this comes as a surprise or not. Charlotte actually had a pretty good season last year. They'll be up at Beaver Stadium in Fall City, a big game. Keyshawn Johnson is now the area leader in passing. He's also, Fall City's just really had a good season so far. They seem to be hitting on all cylinders, so a really big game there. Another one with second place at District State is Ganado and Van Vleck. Both those teams lost to East Bernard, but as Ganado goes over to Van Vleck, it should be an interesting contest. If you know Ganado's new coach, Brent Bennett, he was at Bay City last year, so he's very familiar with Van Vleck. He knows. And, of course, their outstanding running back, Dimitri Monroe, who has over 1,100 yards this season. So, I mean, that'll be a big game for that because the winner will take over sole possession of second place. So, really, as we get down to it here now, week 9, 10, 11, I mean, this is it. I mean, this is when the playoff berth will be determined. And you can follow us both Thursday and Friday night. We'll have all the scores for you here. Keep up with avosports.com. And, of course, we'll have all the information and the game stories in the grid on Sunday. And then we'll see you again next week for week 10.